The Head Coach Isaac Collins Show. Here's Dan Flickinger and Seton Hill Head Coach Isaac Collins.
Welcome back live as we continue on Griffin's Game Day here on the Westmoreland Sports Network. It's all brought to you by Three Rivers Orthopedic. An interview coming up with senior defensive lineman Arthur Sapdong. That's on the way, but right now it is time for the head coach Isaac Collins Show in his second season at Seton Hill University. Coach, you guys started off with a 55-30 loss against Shippensburg last week. I know not the way you wanted to start the season, obviously, but talk about some of the positive things you saw and just reflect back on the game last week.
Well, I think definitely saw some good things. Seeing offensively our ability to kind of create explosive plays and get that quick strike, which we didn't have a year ago. Defensively, while the scoreboard and yardage-wise we weren't where we needed to be, we still were able to force some turnovers. And then the big thing that we talked about was just the way our guys came out of the locker room in the second half. It's a 34-16 game. We talked about what we needed to do in terms of having a big return and making the game a 4-point game because we were only a couple scores away. They came out and did all the things that we wanted to. Unfortunately, we kind of squirted the ball away there on the 4-yard line, which led to them going 96 yards and scoring and really kind of broke our backs a little bit. But there were a lot of positives that came out of it, and we just got to get this week under our belt and get focused on trying to get our first win.
I want to ask you about the fumble and the the drive that Shippensburg had a little bit later, but the Red Raiders score first on the extra point. It's botched, and Phil Moreland scoops it up, takes it back for 2. Your first 2 points of the season, your first points of the season is a 2-pointer by Phil Moreland. So in your coaching career, have you ever scored your first points of the season?
No.
On a scoop like that?
No, that's definitely, we talk a lot in practice about that's not a playoff, and we, screaming at our guys about scoop and score, and usually that's, sometimes feel like it's just coaching jargon. So in that case, it actually worked. We were yelling scoop and score, and he did. So we'll take it any way we can get it these days.
And obviously heads-up play by Phil as well.
It was, and I was very pleased because a lot of times what happens is everyone wants to form a convoy running with them, and we had guys that actually turned back and made some blocks that I really think sprung them and was able to get them in the zone for the 2 points.
Shippensburg's up 20-2 early in the second quarter, and on the first play of the ensuing drive, after Shippensburg scores to go up 20-2, first play in the ensuing drive, a bomb from Drew Jackson to F.J. Williams, and at that point it's 20-9. You mentioned the quick strike ability that you guys have this year that with all the injuries and things like that, you didn't really have last year too much.
No, it's definitely a bonus and a plus, I think, in the back of the minds of our players. They're going to be thinking, hey, you know what, here's the deal. We fall behind. That's okay. We can do it. We can come back. Or if they score, we can counter. And that's really good in terms of building confidence going forward.
Shippensburg scores, and then you guys score on another long pass play to Eric Kearns, and then Shippensburg scores again. It's 34-16 at halftime, and as you mentioned, you guys came out in the second half, didn't hang your heads. You came out, and Malik Scott really gave you a big spark with a long kickoff return. First, kind of talk about the return, and then another hookup between Jackson and Williams.
Well, we've been working all camp on our special teams. It was definitely something that was an issue a year ago, and we really focused on it. I thought Coach Williamson did a great job this offseason getting out and talking to some folks and changing the way we're practicing and really kind of getting our kids to buy in. So it was nice to see them have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, in particular in our return game. So they, the guys did a great job. They held their blocks. They kept it above the waist. It didn't hold, and we got 11 guys working together, and they produced a great return that gave our offense a short field.
And then the touchdown once again between the two. Hopefully we're going to be seeing those two guys hook up a lot this year. And I know you were really excited when you brought F.J. Williams in as a transfer, and we're seeing why. Well,
there's no, for us, there's no doubt that he's a tremendous football player, but I think he needed to, some confidence. I think going through spring ball and learning a new system, things were a little bit slower for him. So watching him get off to such a great start has us excited because we think we have a number of talented receivers. So certainly, from our perspective, if we can get one guy that can start raising the bar, hopefully we'll get a little bit of competition at that group.
Coach, it's 34-23. Both teams kind of exchanged possessions at that point. A couple of minutes later, Ricardo Housen intercepts a pass. and gives you guys good field position at your own 46-yard line. You convert a big fourth down play with a 29-yard pass to Eric Kearns. You can kind of feel the momentum on your side. Again, after the interception, a big fourth down play, all the momentum on your side. And then unfortunately, your freshman running back, Evan Bird, on first down and goal at the 8-yard line, fumbles at the 4, as we were talking about before. Shippensburg takes over. Not only do they take over, but they drive at 96 yards for a touchdown. Obviously, anybody watching the game, key part in the game, perhaps the most crucial part in the game. Just kind of talk about how that all played out. The interception then, you guys having all the momentum, and then that kind of taken away from you.
Well, and it's a sign of a young football team, and I was, again, that was one of the things I was disappointed about at the end of the game is, it's not so much the fumble, that's part of the game, but allowing them to go 96 yards.
Right.
We talked as our defense went on the field about, hey, we got to hold them here. Let's get them to punt. We can still get good field position. We still can have some momentum. And, we were inches away on a wheel route they ran. Falvatovich, just mistimed his jump a little bit, and then that was an explosive play that kind of got them out of the hole and really kind of kept their drive going and kept our defense on the field. So, the number of snaps that our defense played, a lot of people asked me after the game about, hey, with your offense, if they could have hung under the ball and maybe gave your defense a break. Well, I shared with our defense, on Monday that a lot of that was on us. I mean, we had a 3rd and 14. They got an 88-yard touchdown pass, So it's a case where we had opportunities where we got them the 3rd down. We got to hold up our end of the deal, and we can get our offense the ball back. So a lot of our focus this week has been on finding ways to get our offense the ball as much as possible during the course of the game, because certainly their defense did a good job of holding our offense on 3rd down and getting their offense opportunities.
Obviously a really tough spot for a freshman in his first game to turn the ball over in such a crucial situation. How's Evan mentally after the game?
He's great. I mean, he struggled during the game. I had to grab him a couple times and look him in the eye and say, man, this is part of the game. You got to focus on what went wrong and not what happened, and that's our mindset. So he understands, this week, and he's got to focus on making sure he protects the football, as all our backs do, because that's one of the criteria that we lay out for all of our skilled players that are going to handle the football. Is we have to protect the football. We can't give the other team gifts. So certainly he's battling back, and I don't expect him to do anything different other than to squeeze the football a little bit tighter and finish off the run.
Yeah, certainly a big play in that at that point of the game. It could have been 34-30. It goes instead 41-23. Last score of the game for you, Coach. Another long pass play. Drew found Marcus Peterson from 42 yards away for a score. Had to feel good for the senior to get involved and get his first touchdown catch of the year.
Yeah, you're always rooting for those seniors that don't get a ton of playing time. So for him to be able to get a collegiate touchdown, that was exciting, and was happy for him. And Marcus has done a good job in camp and has been a good kid, in terms of the transition to the new staff. So I was very happy for him, and hopefully he'll get some more opportunities down the road.
Evaluate Drew's play last week, if you could, Coach. Seemed like he was inconsistent at times. Obviously threw a nice long ball, and other times he seemed was on. Was it a case of him playing for the first time in a year in a real game setting, you think?
I think a little bit of that, and I think a little bit of the scoreboard. We got into scoreboard watching, which in our offense you can't do. There's a few times where we had to grab him on the side and say, man, you got to take the check down. Let's keep the sticks moving. Let's hang on to the football. I know that he liked the matchups and felt we could get some explosive plays. But in this offense, it's about consistently getting first downs. So at the end of the game, you want to have about 26, 27, 28 first downs. The big plays will come. We expect that to happen. So I think we got to get him to manage the game a little bit. I think it was his first time back. I think there were some jitters. I think there was some kind of being anxious. And then when the score started to get away a little bit, I think he felt he needed to do more. And we got to just settle him down and just say trust the system, take the big plays when they're there, but also understand how to manage the game. So if it's 4th and 6, let's take the hitch, let's take the flat ball, let's keep the sticks moving, let's not try to throw the ball downfield.
There were a few times in one stretch, I think several times, that the receivers, quarterback, not on the same page. Are those reads at the line of scrimmage that they weren't on the same page? Can you kind of enlighten us on what was going on?
Yeah, I think a little bit of it is a signaling issue. I think some of the guys are not clearly getting the signal, or they're misreading the signal. So we had to get some things cleaned up this week. That we're constantly talking to guys, making sure they know what's going on, getting your eyes around fast enough for the football, recognizing pressure, recognizing the voids in the zone. Typical stuff that young receivers are going to have to deal with. So certainly there were some misfires in terms of just miscommunication and not recognizing, hey, snap that route off, or hey, I'm coming to you right now. Because what we do in our system, the quarterback is the guy that makes the progression. Our receivers are taught you run your route as hard as you can. If you're covered, you're covered. That means someone else is open. So I think for some of our young receivers, they're not understanding that if you're not covered, we're going to throw you the ball.
Right.
So the misfires with Lenny, one comes to mind, and then we had one with Larry Joshua that comes to mind. So being able to get those things cleaned up and make sure we're getting on the same page, I think is going to be critical this week.
Coach, we talked about FJ. Eric Kearns building off of a pretty strong freshman season. Kind of talk about his play and a pretty strong game from him.
Yeah, we're excited. I mean, he's done a really good job this offseason of trying to get himself in the playbook and become a little bit more of a student of the game. I think he's getting more confident because he's understanding what we need of him, and he's a guy that can be a big play, receiver for us. He's got to get a little bit more consistent with catching the football. He was extremely disappointed at the one touchdown he dropped, and just shared with him, hey, you got to focus on what happened. Okay, you didn't track the football, you didn't look it into your over your outside shoulder. Just a little detail points that young receivers don't always account for. It's just I'm fast, I'm a good athlete, and they think it's going to happen. But as we know, it's a skill game out there, so he has to make sure he's executing those little things.
I always think it's very interesting, too, when you see receivers that might not be the fastest guys but can catch the ball. They're still going to be successful if they're smart. You don't have to have all the speed, but you got to be able to catch, right? So, I mean, it's interesting to see when you have, you talk to coaches, whether at the high school, college, or even NFL level, about some guys like, I don't know, Wes Welker or something like that are good route runners, don't have all the speed in the world, but are smart and good route runners and can catch the ball.
No, and you need both on your team. You got to have those guys that are really good possession guys. You got to have the guys that can push the top off the coverage. And we feel like we got some receivers that can do both. We just got to get them a little bit more consistent in the catching area, a little bit more consistent in running their routes with a little bit more precision.
Evaluate your offensive line play, Coach. Some new guys in the unit. I know you still didn't run the ball as well as you'd liked, obviously, but seems to be improving, as opposed to last year. Can you kind of tell us what you saw from them on film?
I was very pleased with that group, and we had talked about it.
And obviously no sacks, too. First of all, how did I forget to mention that? No sacks.
They're definitely kind of taking some pride in that and trying to protect the quarterback. They understand how important Drew is to us and, just that position in general to our offense. So being able to give him some time back there and allowing him to, survey the field, as they say, was really exciting. But I just thought they played together, that they played hard, played tough. They made their mistakes, but from a head coach's standpoint, I've been excited about that group really since about the middle of training camp. They really have started to come together, and sometimes it's nice to have some freshmen and young kids in it because sometimes they just don't know. I mean, that was a big game against a really good football team, but I don't think our freshmen knew that. I think they thought they were playing against Hempfield,
right? Exactly,
or someone, So we're hoping they can keep that going throughout the season because it's going to only get tougher from here.
And then once they realize how big these games are, they'll have that experience in them already, and that's
exactly
kind of how you build the program, right?
That's it.
That's it, man. That's it. Talk defensively. A couple of guys stood out. Tim Johnson, 12 tackles. He was certainly ready to play a sack and 3 for a loss. Arthur Sapdong, who you will be seeing and hearing from in just a couple of minutes, big sack early. Can you talk about those two guys? And Ricardo Housen had a number of tackles and interception as well.
Yeah, no, it's been great defensively. We like I said, we made some plays at times. We just were inconsistent with it, and we got to get a few more guys kind of contributing. I was very excited for Tim. He obviously last season had a good season for us, and now he's in a little bit more of a leadership role. And Zim was a little bit nicked up during the game, so it was nice to see Tim step up and kind of help him a little bit. And we're excited to get those 3 guys back on the field, and the development of Sapp and some of our young defensive linemen, and Ricardo on the back end getting more and more experience. We're hoping that each week we can make the natural progression in terms of becoming a really good defense.
Nice to see defensively. I mentioned it to Zim last week, Tyler Zimmer, that Josh Valatovich is back and healthy, first of all. Second of all, now he's going to be starting at safety for you. I know it was kind of between him and Tanilius Walton. I'm sure we'll see a lot of Tanilius as well. Talk about what the progressions that Josh has made after missing all of last year, and just how I'm sure it's a pleasure to have him as a player, because he's a lot of fun to watch, and he really lays it on the field, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does, and it's been great having him back there. He's so savvy, and I think the little things that he does, really kind of helps our football team. And we're just, my prayers are with him that he stays healthy, because he does put it all on the line. And a few times I had to, pull him out because I could see him starting to wear a little little bit, and he doesn't like to come off the field. And I told him, look, we're just going to protect you and make sure that we do what's best for you in the long run. And I think he's understanding that now, and understanding that this is a process, and you got to make sure that you're doing your part and being honest. So when he would come off, I'd ask him how he was feeling, because it's one of those unfortunate things when you're dealing with the head. Only the person knows. You can never really gauge by looking at them, because there's some that can fake it pretty well. So I try to ask him those tough questions, and it's always followed with "be honest with me." So he knows, and he said he's felt good, was a little bit sore after the game, but this week's had a good week of practice, so we're looking forward to the game today.
And Chase Parker will be back this week, correct, on defense?
Yes, Chase is back. Had a great week of practice, running around and almost as if nothing happened. So hopefully we can keep it that way.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing him back with Zimmer, Parker, and Johnson at the linebacker spot. Going to be nice to see. Coach, one final thing for you. Obviously, the Lock Haven Eagles coming in. It's interesting when you look at both programs. Certainly, both sides are really trying to get going in the right direction. Lock Haven coming off of a 3-win season, which is their most wins in a long time. I know they're coming off of a loss last week, but talk about the problems they'll present for you. And one of the matchup problems that they present for a lot of people is Matt Lubers, the tight end. A big kid, led their team in receiving last week. Talk about the type of matchup issue that he might present for you.
Well, he's a challenge because he's a good target. He's got great hands. He has a good feel for working the seam in the middle of the field. They do a great job off of their play action. Just watching them against West Virginia State, he was running free a few times because they set it up off of play action. So I think that's going to be a point of emphasis today for us to be able to figure out where he's at and make sure that we're fitting the gaps and we're doing the things necessary to stop the run, but also putting ourselves in a position to be able to take away one of their weapons. But I think across the board, and look at them offensively, I think their offensive line plays hard. I think they're physical. They got some big bodies inside that can get some movement. They got a big back that breaks a lot of tackles, runs hard. They got a quarterback that you can just see him getting more and more confidence as he plays. And as that game wore on, down at West Virginia State, last week, it's rainy, it's muddy. In the fourth quarter, he was playing, like a kid that was just Friday Night Lights, just having a good time. So, we're going to have our hands full, I think, defensively in a different way. I think they're a little bit different than, Shippensburg. I think they got a plan that they want to work. They're pretty consistent with it, and they just don't make a lot of mistakes. They're going to wait for you to break down, and they're going to run the football at you, and when you suck up, they're going to try and throw the ball over your head on play action.
Kind of more of an old school approach that they use as opposed to Shippensburg. Even you guys that like to get up to the ball and go quickly, they kind of huddle up and do the whole old school approach?
Well, they do some no huddle. I mean, they're going to line up on the ball, but their pace. They're not trying to get you lined up in bad positions. They're trying to make sure that they know what they're doing so that they can execute whatever play they're running. And I think that'll probably be the biggest difference. Where a lot of times Ships a broken play. They're whipping it out to the flats, and they only got two guys out there, so the offensive line might be blocking outside zone. And the quarterback, excuse me, makes a decision that, hey, that guy's open, I'm going to get it out there. So a little bit different than that, but I think our guys are going to have their hands full in a different way, and that I think they'll be consistent. I don't think they're going to deviate from their game plan. I think they're going to try to exploit some of the things that we didn't do well, and I think they're going to try and run the football. So we got to be up for that challenge.
You mentioned rainy and muddy at West Virginia State. I feel like when we used to be in that conference, every time we went down there, it was rainy and muddy. So every Saturday during the fall season, apparently it rains a lot down there, because I remember we had a sideline reporter a couple of years ago that literally came in, I think, at halftime, and I said, man, you better just stay in the press box, Mike Wilson, because he just looked awful. He was soaked. It was cold. It was just an ugly game. So it's funny you say that. It just kind of reminds me of Mike. He just, I don't know, he looked like a wet dog or something. He was just, he was so wet and freezing. And Chris Snyder was like, yeah, you better stay up here too before you get sick. I think he was sick for the next 3 weeks or so. So glad we don't have to go down there anymore, I suppose. Yeah. Your keys to victory, Coach, against the Lock Haven Eagles here today?
Well, I think it'll be critical for us to get off to a fast start. We've yet in my tenure here been able to jump out on a football team early. I think we got to, when we get the ball offensively, we got to find ways to produce points. Defensively, I think we got to be more consistent. We got to get get some stops. We got to get some turnovers. We got to feed our offense, because I think when you have a young offense, they need a lot of snaps. And last week, we were only able to get them around 78, 79 snaps. We want that to be 85 to 90. So we got to do our part defensively. Get off the field on third down. The usual: protect the football, don't turn it over, don't give them cheap ones, make them earn it. Limit the explosive plays from a defensive standpoint, and then we got to continue to bring our special teams along, because our hope is that can be a weapon for us, either by getting us great field position or hopefully being able to score.
Yeah, I mean, you look at last week, you guys forced some turnovers. You only turned it over twice, but obviously it only takes once for it to kind of cost you the game, and that's kind of how it played out last week, huh?
Yeah, and that's something that we're just we're not at that point. I don't know if you're ever good enough as a program, but we're certainly not at that point where we can turn the ball over and take away an opportunity to get 7 points and have them go the other way and score 7. So from our perspective, it's a point of emphasis that we're going to make all year and continue to kind of bring this young football team along. And I think if we're able to limit those types of mistakes and come out and play a good, clean game on the road, I'm excited to see how our guys react to the first time being on the road and playing at a different stadium. It'll kind of set the tone, I think, for the season.
Well, Coach Greg Kristen will be with us on Saturday, so we'll talk to you at halftime and on the postgame show after a victory.
Yes, I love it. Look forward to it.
That's Coach Isaac Collins. Good luck today.
Thanks.
Coach Isaac Collins of the Seton Hill Griffins. Coming up next, we will have a chance to talk with Arthur Saptong, who once again had a big sack early last week, and we'll talk with him as we continue live from Griffins Game Day. We're counting you down to kickoff between Seton Hill and Lock Haven as we continue on the Westmoreland Sports Network.